Hi, today we're going to teach you how to make a Chibi Bucky plushie. I'm Black Fuwa, aka Social with Pancakes.
And my name is Uriel. My Instagram is Tteokbokki, TTE0. I'm just gonna have Zoe link it.
I'll link it. This is my guinea pig. So yeah, this is the less experienced with sewing, but still really wants a Bucky plushie. Thus, if I can teach you, I can teach anyone.
I pricked my finger 6 times.
We haven't even started yet.
I know. Remember the time we made jellies?
Yes, I remember the time we made jellies. So anyways, we're going to be teaching you how to make this. It's a Chibi Bucky plushie that is really overcomplicated, and yeah, that's a thing.
116 stitches.
Basically, what you're going to want to do is first get a printout of the pattern, which I will be linking below as soon as I figure that out. There are 3 sheets.
The one with the mouth.
Right, one with the mouth. I have an older version of the pattern here, so ignore that. But what you want is 3 sheets. There's the iron-on patterns. There's the body. And there's the accessories and clothes. And you want all 3 of those sheets. And the first thing you're going to do is cut everything out. So for ours, we have what you're going to want to do ideally is print the iron-ons out separate. So I have iron-ons that I've printed separately, in addition to the black and white prints that we won't be using.
Each sold separately, individually.
So basically take your thing and start cutting. Both finished cutting out all of our bits. We got a plastic baggie because there are a lot of bits and you don't want to lose any. Make sure you remember to cut out the face, which is on the page with the iron-on stencils and diagram. And now we are getting ready to start cutting fabric. Before we start cutting fabric, I wanted to say a quick thank you to Sarah Ford, whose DeviantArt I will link below, for making the original body base that I used when I created this plushie. So, for this plushie, now that we've got the pattern cut out, we need to go over ingredients. So, there's a lot.
Sugar, spice, and a little bit of rice.
So you're gonna need stiff black felt, regular black felt, skin tone, which is in here somewhere, skin tone, gray felt, light iron-on transfer paper, which we already talked about a little bit, light iron-on transfer paper, dark iron-on transfer paper, Velcro is optional, I didn't use any, copper felt, which is this color, brown felt, stuffing, dark gray felt.
That's enough stuffing?
No, that's not going to be nearly enough stuffing, but that's just an example of stuffing. And a basic sewing kit, which includes needle, pins, thread, scissors, etc. So, once you have all of that assembled, the plushie itself can be broken down into 9 basic steps. There's the head, the body, the shirt, pants, boots, glove, singular, the chest holster, the hip holster, knee pads, and the mask. Sorry, that's 10 parts. And let's get started. First, you're going to want to find your face and chin pattern. Now, it's up to you whether or not you want to leave a margin. Personally, I don't for this project. But it's, again, up to you whether or not you want to leave a margin. So once you're done cutting the face out of skin tone, you're going to want to cut the sides and back of head out of brown felt and the hair out of brown felt. So the hair is two parts. You're going to want the front of the hair and the back of the hair. Quick lesson in pinning. Gimme. So you take it, put it through once, and then you turn it through again.
Okay, got it.
Okay, once you get your face and head stuff cut out, you're going to want to get your iron-on out. So for the iron-on, we're using the opaque transfer paper, and you're going to want to cut out your pattern. Save the stars for later. Those are going to be for the arms. Little dashes for the mouth. So you're going to want to cut out as close as you can the iron-on stuff. Make sure you get into the corners, because anything that you don't cut out is going to be opaque. Be careful not to lose the mouth, because it's tiny and really easy to lose. When you are done cutting it out, peel the back off the iron-on patches, or iron-on transfer paper. Peel it off and position it. And then you're going to take some parchment paper and iron. That is how you make the face. Now that you have all of your pieces cut out and your face ironed on, you're going to take the sides of the head, these parts, and you're going to attach them to the chin, like so. Then tie a knot at the end. You want to attach it like this. So the angled sides are attached to the sides of the chin, because eventually you're going to be flipping it over. When you look at this, you see how one side is angled and one side is flat? One side is like at a kind of a 90-degree angle and the other one's at a different angle.
Oh, okay.
You want the one that's at a different angle.
Oh, okay.
And just try to keep your stitches nice and tight. Tie it off and get ready to sew again.
How do you do that?
Just tie a knot.
Like,
just tie a knot as close to the bottom as you can. So now is a bit of a tricky part. You take the bangs, which are this, and you want to put, oh my god, I'm an idiot. I did the iron-on sideways. We did the iron-on sideways. You're not supposed to have these on the side. You're supposed to have them at the top. Yeah. Pin your bangs to the top. If you're doing it freehand, just try and get it as centered as possible. Be careful not to puncture the iron-on when you pin the bangs. And then take the chin, flip the sides up so it looks like this, and pin it to the bottom. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to pin the bangs and then you're going to pin the sides. And you want the sides to be along. The sides are going to sew along the seam. But at first you want to just pin. Make sure you pin the bangs so that they are they go inward so that they aren't completely, you're not completely sewing them in. Because as you can see on this Bucky, they stick out a bit so that they're adjustable. So at a certain point, you want to have the bangs come in. So just determine where you want that to be and pin accordingly. And then pin the sides so that they go all the way up. Again, being extremely careful not to puncture the iron-on. You don't want holes in your face.
Or in your eyeballs.
Yep. And then you're just going to sew.
What if you don't have enough?
What if you don't have enough what?
Thread.
Well, then sew what you can, and then you'll tie off and get another line of thread.
Okay.
I'm changing how I'm doing this so you can see more easily what I'm doing. So for the next step, you're going to sew this right along there where they meet, and then you're going to cut any excess fabric, which there should be a little bit of excess. Now that you've got this sewed and cut, you're going to take the backs of the head, and you want them to both be facing the same way like this. You're going to sew along the edge. You're going to tie off in the center and then sew another line along the rest of the edge because you will be cutting this in half after you've sewn it. Now that this is sewn with 2 stops in the center, you're going to cut it straight down the middle. Now that this is cut in half, you're going to take it and pin the back hair in between the 2 pieces. Now that it's pinned, go ahead and sew straight along the seam. Now that you've sewn this seam, go ahead and sew these little guys together like so. So now that you've sewed the little cuts in, you're going to take the face and attach it to the back of the head. So you want to have it pinned, the 2 seams at the top matched up, and then basically just make sure that the hair on the bottom is tucked in and have it pinned all along, all the way down to here. So you're going to sew from here all the way around to here. And you're going to leave the cream part unsewed because you want to leave a hole for you to turn it inside out because that's going to be the neck. Okay, once you've sewn all the way around on the seam, you're going to want to very carefully flip the plushie head inside out. Make sure that you don't damage the iron-ons. If everything looks good, then you're going to go ahead and stuff the plushie head and set it aside. So to stuff the plushie head, just get some polyfill or whatever stuffing material you want to use. Break off a chunk and go ahead and stuff in the neck hole, which should still be open. You're going to have to use a lot more stuffing than you think you will, just because the head will slowly expand and it'll take a lot more stuffing than you think. When you're done stuffing the head, it should look like this, and you're just going to want to set that aside for later. Now we're on to step 2. So for step 2, we're doing the body. You want to cut the 2 pieces of the body and 2 of the right arm out of the flesh tone or cream colored fabric. So once you have your body pieces and your arm cut out, you're going to put those to the side. Then you're going to take some light gray felt, sorry for the shadow, and you're going to take your iron-on transfer. Follow the instructions of your individual iron-on transfer because not all of them are the same. For this one, I'm peeling it off first. And then you're going to very carefully iron it on before you cut anything out. So I'm not 100% sure what happened, but my iron-on transfer paper lifted up a little bit. Anyways, that's going to be okay. So next you're going to want to cut out the ironed-on arms with a decent margin. So cut around all of the lines, not along the gray line that is going to be your sewing guide. Now you should have 2 pieces of the left arm. You're going to want to sew these together, but very, very carefully and without pinning them.
Also, you're not going to want to sew all the way. You're going to want to stop at about that point so that you can flip it inside out, because with the iron-on transfer, it's a lot more rigid and a lot more difficult to flip than a normal felt would be. Once you've sewn along the edge, you want to have sewn to about there. And as you can see, I've tied off, but I haven't cut this thread because you're going to continue sewing in just a second. So once you've made that progress, you're going to very carefully turn it inside out. As you can see, my iron-on got a little bit beat up in a couple places. So I think that's because on this side I didn't iron it on fully, so I'm going to have to do some patchwork and try and repair that. But yours should come out looking pretty good. Once you get your arm flipped inside out, you're going to want to get your iron-on star patch. You're going to want to cut a little bit inside of the black outline. I made the outline extra thick so that you can cut some of that down. And then you're going to iron it on. So once you have it cut out, you're going to take it and put it on the side of the arm that you already sewed. And you're going to put it over both parts and just iron it straight on. Now that you have your star ironed on, it is time to sew the last seam on that arm. You're just going to, using a ladder stitch or hidden stitch, sew these two sides together until they're closed. Make sure that you leave this side completely open because you're going to want to be able to stuff the arm. Okay, now that you have your ladder stitch done on the underside of the arm, you're going to want to go ahead and stuff it. A trick that I use for stuffing the arm is to take some dull tipped scissors, so ones that do not have a pointy tip, if I can get that to focus, and very carefully to nudge the stuffing in, because you want to get the stuffing all the way down into the arm. So using a combination of your fingers and some sort of blunt object that has a little bit better reach than your fingers, unless you have extremely slender fingers, in which case good for you. Once you have your arm stuffed, it should look like this. Next, you're going to take your body and your arm, your other arm, and you're going to sew along the seams that are going to be on the outside. So for the body, you're going to want to sew right along here. Make sure you leave this seam open. And then for the arm, again, you're going to sew all the way around, but this time go all the way to the edge. Make sure you leave this seam open, but you don't have to worry about doing a ladder stitch on this one because the felt is much more flexible when it doesn't have the iron-on transfer paper. Once you have your seams sewn for the body and the arm, go ahead and turn them inside out and stuff them. Now that you have both arms and your body stuffed, you're going to use a hidden stitch to apply the arms to the body. You want to make sure that the edges get tucked in so that you're not seeing the seam on the outside. Now that you've got both your arms sewn on like so, you're going to want to get out your shirt base pattern and your shirt sleeve pattern and cut those both out of some black felt. So you can see I've got the shirt sleeve and base cut out of black felt. I have also pinned where I want to sew to from the bottom so that I know where to stop because of where the arms are attached. And I also pinned this guy in half, folded in half, because I want to sew straight down that seam. Okay, I've sewn this seam, but I haven't sewn the other seam yet. I've also sewn this, the sleeve seam, and flipped it inside out. Now what I'm going to do is, while it's inside out, place it so that it lines up and fold like that. Then I'm going to very carefully sew along each side, making sure not to sew all the way through, otherwise you'll basically sew your sleeve shut so that you can't get the arm through. I'll sew along each side and then I'll sew this bottom bit together here. Now that you've got your shirt sewn and flipped right side out, you don't want to have this seam sewn, by the way. You're going to put the shirt onto your plushie. Now that the shirt is on the plushie, and I added back some of the stuffing that I had taken out in order to make the plushie a little bit more pliable, make it a little bit easier to get the shirt on, I am going to take these two little flippy flaps and sew them together because you want to have a shoulder connection over the metal arm. It's going to partially cover the red star, but that's okay. And you may have to cut, you will definitely have to cut the excess from these because I made them extra long so that you can choose where exactly you want to sew. Now that you have your shirt on and sewn, you are going to want to attach the head. So in order to do that, first you're going to flip up the hair and pull down the shirt so that you have access to the neck and to the base of the, well, what would be a skull, but in this case is all felt. And you're going to use a hidden stitch to attach the head to the body right along that seam. There is actually a video tutorial by the same person that I gave credit to for making the body base, and I will link that tutorial down below in case you're wondering what some of her tricks are for attaching the head to the body. Now that Bucky's head is on, we want to give him some pants. So you want your black pant pattern and some black felt. And you're just going to cut out 2 of the pattern in felt. With both of the pants cut out, you're going to take your black thread and sew a seam along the outer edge. There, you're going to sew a seam through the middle and a seam along this outer edge. Don't sew on this edge or at the bottom of the feet. So now that the pants are sewn, go ahead and flip those inside out and put them on your plushie. And since felt isn't the most smooth fabric, you may have to struggle a little bit to get these on the plushie, but it'll be worth it. Just make sure you don't split any seams. And the final finishing touch for this is you want to make sure that Bucky's shirt is over the pants. Next, you want your boot pattern and more black felt. So you're going to cut out 4 of these little black boots. With all 4 boots cut out, you're going to put them into groups of 2 and you're going to sew the outside seam. Make sure you don't sew where the feet are going to go. With a lot of maneuvering and a bit of struggling, the boots are now on with them tucked underneath the pants and everything. So now we move on to the glove. So you want this, and I put that wrong. You actually want 2X black gloves, so ignore that. And you're going to get more black felt. The gloves are a little odd. You're going to sew a tiny bit of a seam here. You're going to sew a seam here. And you're going to sew this seam. And you're going to leave gaps here, here, and here. The glove is on. You may have to stretch it a tiny bit to get it over the thumb, but the glove is on. And now we get to the fun part, which is the chest holster. For the chest holster, you want 3A, B, and C. You also want some black felt and some stiff black felt. You're going to cut 3A out of the stiff black felt. You're going to cut 3B 1 times 1 out of the regular black felt and 3 of 3C out of regular black felt. Once you have all your strips cut out, and take your time because those can be really difficult, you are going to lay them out like so. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to do this again with the pattern. You have your 3A, 3C, and this one is an upside down 3B, and these 2 are obviously 3C. So you're going to sew all of the straps onto the holster. Okay, now that all of the little strips are sewn on, we're going to put the holster on the plushie like so. And you're just going to loop the strips around to where you're going to want them to be, because we are going to mock up where we want to sew everything. So now that you have that done, you want to get, I have this water-soluble pencil that I use to mark fabric, It comes in handy. You can, of course, do this with pins, but it's a little bit more tricky because with the pins, you are essentially pinning very, very small amounts of fabric, and it just is a little tricky. So make sure you have this lined up evenly in the back and line up where you want everything to go. So I'm going to mark there because I want to cut there, and I want to cut there. So I've marked where I want to cut because there is a little bit of excess. This strap, it doesn't look like there's going to have excess. Well, maybe. So that strap is going to go there. So I'll just mark where I want that to attach. And then this strap is going to have a bit of excess. So mark off where you want to cut. And again, mark where you want to attach. So everything should be nice and marked. And the markings are pretty subtle and they will rub off pretty easily. With everything marked, then you're just going to unloop everything. And you're going to cut the excess fabric where you need to cut it. And you're going to sew the shoulder straps to the waist straps. So I'll sew this like that, and this like that. And you're going to leave the waist straps unsewn because you're actually going to end up sewing those on the plushie in a minute. It is kind of hard to see, but I have put the holster back on the chibi. So now you are going to very carefully sew, now that these are sewn, you're going to very carefully sew the chest holsters together. You want the one that's cut at an angle to be on top, and you're going to very carefully sew that together while it's on the chibi. Make sure you don't get the shirt or the chibi itself when you're sewing this together. Okay, the chest holster is done. Now we get to the really fun / complicated part. You can see my notes, the hip holster. So for that, you're going to need quite a bit of stuff. Basically the entire 1 series. So all of this, go ahead and get that out. I have put down a black background so that you can see everything laid out. So this is all of your holster bits. I haven't finished cutting out one end because that one I was too small to fit the actual designation on it. So that I'm just saving for now. So in your trusty guide, which is on page, 3 of the pattern, is what you're going to be cutting out of what. So for this little holster project, you're going to need copper or something resembling it, black, stiff black, and a stiff-ish gray. And then you're just going to set about cutting out everything as it says on here. Now that we have lots and lots of little itty-bitty pieces, we are going to go ahead and take 1K, which are the 2 little black knives, and 1J, which is the knife holster, and you're going to sew the knives to the knife holster. One should go like this, and the other should go like this. And you're just going to sew around where the body of the knife would attach, so just a little seam right through there. Just remember to keep your seams neat because these seams will be visible. As you can see, the knife holster is now sewn together. It's kind of hard to see. And in case you were wondering, the little diagrams that I've drawn out here on page, whatever page this is, are actually where you sew. So all of the black lines are where you're going to be sewing, and the gray lines are obviously the cutouts for the fabric. So those are helpful diagrams in case you can't see the black on black on black. That is this tutorial. So next you are going to take the buckle, which is 1I, I believe, and the 2 straps that are 1D, and also 1E. And you're going to sew all of that together. So the 2 straps go on either end of the buckle, there and there, like that. And the little strap goes right there. Okay, these 3 straps are all sewn on. It's kind of hard to see once again because we're working in black. Next, you are going to take the last of these straps, 1F, and the hip holster itself, which is 1A, and you are going to sew these together. After, of course, you sew a very small loop into 1A. So basically, you're just going to fold a loop over that is wide enough that this strap can fit through and just sew straight across. You're going to attach 1A like that. Okay, now that you have your little loop sewn on, you should have a loop through there, and you should have the strap sewn onto your hip holster. Now you are going to take a few different components. First, you're going to take 1H, this little guy, which is going to go right there. Then you're going to take 1B, and with a dark gray felt, you're going to sew that one onto the hip holster. It's going to be a bit of a tight fit, but it should go on right there. And then 1C goes over top of that, like so. So you're going to actually be using 2 different threads for this. You're going to be using dark gray and black if you have it. If you don't, just use black. Also, if you are looking for where to sew on the little hip holster thing, you're going to sew that vertical line and a horizontal line like that. Ignore the extraneous black lines that aren't supposed to be there because you don't actually need to sew all the way around the whole thing. So since this is essentially embroidery, I thought I might as well share my method for how I am doing these stitches. Instead of just doing my normal teeny tiny like 1/2 millimeter stitch, I am actually doing a little bit of a different stitch. So when it's on the back like this, I go backwards like 1/2 millimeter. Again, excuse the shaking hands. They're more annoying for me than they are for you, I promise. And then pull it through, and then go forwards about 1 millimeter. Hopefully you can see this. And pull it through, and then just repeat. Keep going backwards and then forwards so that you get even stitching all the way down. We have a hip holster, yay! So personally, I prefer not to sew this top seam because a holster would traditionally be open at the top so you can stick stuff in it. And it also saves having to do not 1 but 2 seams. Next, we are going to take the belt and sew the holster to the belt. So first you're going to want to slip your belt loop through the holster loop, which might take some finessing. Once you've got that on, you're just going to line up your holster strap and sew it underneath, and you can flip this little that up so that you can access and just sew a straight seam right underneath. The hip holster is on and attached to the belt. Now I have just arranged the two of the stiff black felt squares and what is going to be the grenade and the grenade strap on the belt like so, and then I am just going to sew a line straight across. And what I'm going to do is sew straight across, sew a little bit up and down to keep the ends of the grenade strap from flipping up a little bit. Continue sewing and then sew a little bit up and down again. Now that this side is sewn, you are going to take the rest of the black felt squares and arrange them on the other side. Make sure you put a little bit of distance between the buckle and where you're arranging them, because there should actually be a bit more distance. And then you're just going to repeat the process backwards on this side. Also, I actually ended up cutting and shortening this strap here because it just was not sitting right. So if anything comes out wonky or just weird, go ahead and fix it because the pattern isn't perfect, but it at least will get you in the ballpark. Now that all of your seams on the belt are sewn, you are going to very carefully take your belt on your chibi and measure out where everything's going to line up. So the belt straps are pretty long. They will have excess length. And you're just going to measure where exactly you need to sew for the knife holster to attach to the belt straps. So using this handy pencil, once again, you're just going to mark out that you're sewing there and sewing there, and then you are going to take your belt off of your chibi and very carefully sew. So once you are done sewing, you will have some excess. Go ahead and just clip the excess, or you can leave it and just let it lay flat if you so choose. With the belt sewn to the knife holster, you can go ahead and put it on your plushie. The next step is the knee pads. The knee pads are 2A, B, and C, and you're going to cut 2 of 2A out of the stiff black felt, 2 of 2B out of regular black felt, and 2 of 2C out of regular black felt. Next, you're going to sew 1 of each strap to the corners of the knee pad, like so. Now that you have 2 pairs of knee pads that are sewn with the straps to the knee pads, you're going to take them and put them on the chibi, and you're just going to measure out where the knee pads will connect with the curved strap on top. With both of those marked out, you are going to just go ahead and sew the knee pads on, and then you will put them on your plushie. The knee pads are sewn, and you are just going to put them on the plushie. Make sure that the curved loop goes on top. Make sure you're careful when you're putting these on the plushie because the straps are pretty thin and delicate. Bucky has his knee pads, you're going to go ahead and take out your pattern pieces for the mask. So you're going to cut 1 of these out of the stiff black fabric, 2 of these out of regular black, and 1 of these out of regular black. So now that everything's cut out, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the 2 sides of the mask and you're going to sew these little darts. Make sure that they're going in opposite directions. So you want one to be going like this and one to be going like that, so that the right sides will be, you know, obviously different because they're going on two different sides of the head. Now you're just going to sew the sides of the mask to the face part of the mask. So you want the long edge that is farther from your seam to be lined up with the edge of the mask, and you're just going to sew a straight seam right along there. Okay, now that that's all sewn, go ahead and flip everything right side out. And then you're just going to put it on the chibi. So line it up where you want the mask to sit and wrap it around. And honestly, if you want to, you can add Velcro where the mask lines up, but I personally don't find the need to do that because when the hair is flipped down, it pretty much holds the mask in place. So the final couple steps are you're going to take the chin flap and measure where that lines up and mark any discrepancies. So now you're going to take the mask off again, and just like you sewed the chin on the plushie, you're going to sew, well, it's similar, you're going to sew this onto the mask. I wanted to show you how to fold the face part of the mask so that you can get a nice seam. So I've already done it on this side, as you can see, and sewn. And then on this side, what you do is you take it and you basically pull back the chin piece and you fold over the face piece so that you can get a nice seam, and then you just sew right along there. Now you just take your mask and flip it right side out. And put it on your Bucky plushie. And thus the Winter Soldier / Bucky plushie is complete. I want to say a big thank you to anybody who has made it to the end of this monstrosity of a tutorial, and if you learned anything, awesome. I hope that you were able to take away at least something. I hope that you find the pattern or some of the tips that I imparted to be helpful, and yeah, enjoy your Bucky plushie.